Thank you so much, Laura, for your reading of that Tower of Babel story. This summer, we've been working our way through Exodus, and after spending a couple weeks with that great flood, we are now at this new part of our long creation story, the Tower of Babel. And I was thinking about the Tower of Babel when I was in my backyard this week at my house in Mount Pleasant. In the backyard, we have a really poorly managed compost bin. My roommates and I don't turn it enough. Sometimes animals jump up from the pile when the plastic top isn't closed as tight as it should be. And when you open it on hot July days, sometimes a swarm of flies arises from the banana peels and eggshells. And a few months ago, when I was out there, I noticed a hole in the side of the black container. At first, I was frustrated. Here's another problem I don't know how to fix. Would we have to buy a whole new system? Could I just patch the hole with duct tape? But then when I looked a little further, I saw a little bit of green sticking out from the hole and thought maybe it's a plant. So I left it. And after a few weeks away this July, I came back home and I was emptying some coffee grinds into the compost bin. And from the hole peeked what looked like a strong vine. And then looking closer, I realized it was definitely a plant, and it was a plant that I recognized. I called in the house for one of my roommates. Look at this tomato. Look at this compost tomato. It's a life after death miracle. And my roommate smiled and said, Kaeley, I love that you're such a meaning maker, but are we really going to keep that tomato? I don't know if I'll eat it. And so began my caretaking for the compost tomato. And you can see that Ben has brought up a picture of how that tomato is doing. You could take away those slides for a second now, Ben. Thank you for sharing. So in this book of Genesis that we have, and in the whole biblical canon, there are a whole lot of natural disasters. There's the great flood that we've talked about for a couple weeks, but there are also plagues of locusts that devour entire cities. Think about our cicada incident times 1,000. There are droughts that quench the mouths of Moses and the Israelites. There are fire-breathing bushes. But the Tower of Babel story that Laura read for us this morning is essentially a human-made disaster. The people say, let us make bricks and burn them. Let us build with those bricks, and then let us build a tower so high that the top of it can reach the heavens. Let us build, let us burn, let us consume. It seems like the humans of ancient times are a lot like the humans of our time that build skyscrapers and burn carbon emissions without consideration. So God comes down and disrupts the people. With her fiery sword, I imagine God coming down and shaking the foundation of the building by distorting the language of the people into many languages, and then the community spreads out in confusion. The Tower of Babel falls to ruins and the people despair. But my question for us this morning is, what comes after the tower falls? When the ash settles and the people look around, what comes from the ground and from the hearts of the people that are still left? In Philadelphia, there's a group of community caretakers that call themselves the Philly Urban Creators. A good friend of mine is doing her PhD at Temple in urban geography and has spent time with this community that started in 2010 when a group of diverse students and artists and entrepreneurs came together to transform a 2-acre plot of land that was vacant and had essentially become a local trash heap in North Philly. And in 3 years, this group of creators made allies with the closest neighbors, cleared away the debris, and began to plant. 10 years later, now, the urban farm is a sanctuary for the community, offering educational programs and food resources and employment for the local North Philly community. The slogan of the Philly Urban Creators is a powerful statement. Life do grow. Here's a mural of their motto on a visit I had to this community a few years ago. Life do grow, no matter what. When Noah and his extended family were on that ark, waiting for the rain to subside, it was a piece of olive branch that signaled their return to land was a reality. And if we think deeper, if we think ecologically about this branch of hope, we realize that olive branches do not grow overnight. In fact, for some varieties of olives, plants do not start bearing fruit until their 5th year of life. So that means if we apply this timeline to Noah, the earth was regrowing for years while humans thought it was full of disaster still. My compost tomato had been germinating and sprouting itself for months inside the bin that I thought was trash every time I opened it. There is no doubt in my mind that after the fall of the Tower of Babel, plants grew, life grew. The holy disruption that in the eyes of humans felt like the end of the world may actually have been a seed of growth for an entire new ecosystem. There's a type of tree called a nurse log. Nurse logs are trees that have fallen or branches that have broken off that seem like death. But instead, these trees nurture and support new growth through their breakdown. When left in a forest, these nurse logs or stumps provide a foundation for new sprouts and shelter for hundreds of types of fungi and insects and worms. In other species, these new trees form life out of death. Here's a photo of a nurse log at the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens in Anacostia, which are now, the lotuses there are in full bloom. So if you haven't been, get yourself down to Kenilworth. But you could see here this very clear stump cut and the green growing out of it. You can see the Urban Creators slogan here, life do grow. And so this brings us to Christmas. Christmas in July, the Christian story of new life, entering the world through the womb of a woman. Our Christmas celebration in the winter season brings us hope for light in darkness as we light the candles of Advent each week with a progressive gaining of light. Light out of darkness, life out of death is both our Christmas story and our Easter story of resurrection. And in the face of the perils of right now, as Christians, we cannot reserve our Christmas story for only once a year. When thinking about climate disaster and pandemic, grief, and racial reckoning, the reminder that Jesus was born into this fleshy world because God so loved us should not be reserved for only the darkest nights. So, as we go forth this July, the season of transition and reopening and continued worry, let us look for the continued signs of new life. Let us close our eyes and imagine the ruins of Babel, now covered with wildflowers and butterflies and birds. When a holy disruption comes and we think the world is over, may we look for our tomatoes in the compost and sing our favorite Christmas songs, even in July. So may it be, and amen.